Welcome, everyone, to the Walking Dead TV Podcast, Episode 2. This is Russ, and tonight we have Brad, Jordan, and John.
Hi, guys.
How's it going?
Good.
What's up, fellas?
Not much. So if you'd like to reach us, send an email at comments@walkingdeadtv.com. You can visit the website at www.walkingdeadtv.com, where we have the freshly branded website that is similar to what you've seen for Half Hour Wasted and Legion of Dudes, with a lot of cool Walking Dead specific stuff on the page, where we've got links to videos, Episode 1, and we'll probably keep updating it as new trailers and new goodies come out based on the TV show leading up to the October 31st premiere of the Walking Dead TV show. You can follow us on Twitter at WDTV Podcast. You can join our Facebook group, and you can go to forum4geeks.com. That's forum4geeks.com, where you'll find our show, as well as the Talking Dead podcast and the Walking Dead cast. So we've got our own little Walking Dead network of podcasts up on the Forum for Geeks forum, so all kinds of good stuff going on. Keep up with all the shows and what we're all up to, because we all have a little bit of different flair to what we present, so all good stuff. And speaking of what we're up to, this is Episode 2, and we thought originally, I think we would do weekly, and given that the show isn't going to premiere until Halloween night, I think it was a little further off than we had originally thought. We started coming up with the schedule, and so we decided to space it out. But I think, John, you're going to talk about what we'll be up to in the near future.
Yeah, we were thinking that we'd go probably bi-weekly until the show begins on Halloween. We should have this episode out by the end of September. Then if we get another episode out in the middle of October, we do have a Robert Kirkman interview that we recorded previously for the Legion of Dudes, so we'd like to run that. Maybe we'll come up with another topic as well. There might be some more show news or maybe another trailer or some images that we can talk about as the show draws near. And then certainly when the TV show begins on Halloween, then we'll start weekly covering each episode after it airs. So I think that's the plan right now. So it looks like we'll go bi-weekly. We'll do another show. We'll have Episode 3 that will be before The Walking Dead airs, and then after that we'll have an episode for each Walking Dead show. One other thing I would like to mention is since our last show, we did go live on iTunes, so you can subscribe there on iTunes now if you search Walking Dead. A bunch of Walking Dead podcasts will come up right there. You can search Walking Dead TV as well. We got a couple of 5-star reviews that I would like to share. The reviews are really important to us. They help us get noticed on iTunes and highlighted maybe as a new and notable or something to watch that helps our listenership. So first one is from Hilton TV. It says, "Can't wait for this show. All these guys are fun to listen to. They know their stuff." So that's great. Thank you very much to Hilton TV. Also from our buddy Daryl. "You will enjoy this podcast. If you're a fan of The Walking Dead comic and you like the television show, I suggest you try this podcast. It's informative, fun to listen to. It's a podcast that is family-friendly as well." Thanks to Daryl. You can find all his great stuff on the No Apologies, Comic Book Roadshow. What else? Daryl is the hardest working man in podcasting. Nothing's On. It's another great TV and movie podcast that you can find Daryl on, so check those out, please. And thanks again for the reviews.
So I guess in between last time we had a show and now the other thing AMCTV.com has done is put up a bunch of, it's funny, off the air we were kind of figuring out what to call these things, because calling them trailers is probably being too generous. They're almost like little vignettes. They're like 16, 15-second spots that they've been putting up that barely show any action. It's usually focused on a character, and they're either walking down the stairs or looking at a dead zombie, or just very, very short little snippets, and then kind of throw the banner up there to tell you that the show is coming. So they've been fun to watch, but haven't really given us anything new or noteworthy that the main trailer that came out several weeks ago has given us.
Although I definitely did love the one I just saw this past week on Mad Men, which was Rick riding towards the abandoned city of Atlanta, Georgia. The same thing I loved in the main trailer where they had the tank and they had that pull-out shot, so you got to see a little bit more as seconds went on of just how big this was. In this particular trailer, it's only like 15 or 20 seconds long, but you start just on Rick on the horse, you back up a little bit, you can see the cars that just are abandoned going the other way out of Atlanta. You back a little bit more, you can see the train on his right that's just been crashed, and then you pull back all the way and you can see just the Atlanta skyline. And a city that looks kind of beautiful. There's some birds in the background, but you just know it's nothing but death and decay there. And they actually just released that image or an image from that as a poster inside current wallpaper. It's so cool looking.
Yeah, I think one thing that is important for the show is the scope. We need it to be big. We need it to be droves and droves of zombies. We need to see the far-reaching effects of this plague or infection or whatever you call it. And I think the trailer and this poster kind of show that that's the way they're going. That panning back and seeing all the destruction and all the kind of broken down places and cars and things. I think that shows that it's what they're going for is the scope of this event. So I think definitely a good sign for the direction of the show.
Definitely. And some more listeners, I've got a cold, which is why my voice sounds so bad. I didn't fall and hurt myself or something. It's just a cold.
I think one of the hardest parts of doing this podcast is knowing how much to say and how much not to say, because as readers of the comic, we have an idea of what the show is going to be like. For those that have just seen the commercials, on AMC, and they're kind of like, "Oh, this looks kind of cool. Maybe I want to watch this." Well, they don't know as much as we do, and so it's really hard for me to know what to say and what not to say. And I wonder if the 4 or 5 of us take that for granted when we start talking about certain things. For instance, you brought up Daryl a minute ago, John. Earlier in the week, I had tweeted from our Twitter account that we were going to be recording a new episode soon, and if they had any questions, to please relay them. And his question was, "What is your favorite Walking Dead character and why?" Well, I can answer that, but I'm not, because it's a potential spoiler, and I want to answer it really bad. I want to talk about this character, but I know that if I was a watcher of the show and a non-reader of the book, and I was listening to our podcast and somebody said something that spoiled something down the way from me, I would be very angry. So it's so difficult to, at least for me, to try to talk intelligently about the show without spoiling it.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is, if we ever decide to go into something that happened in the comic rather than a television show, something that might be a spoiler, we'll definitely give a big spoiler alert. We'll tell everybody when it's coming, because we might be doing a lot of talk about the comic in the downtime between seasons. Certainly in this preseason time, we're going to look at the trade paperback volume 1 today, so we're going to do that separately and try to keep it so that if you have no interest in the comic stuff, you won't be spoiled by it, and hopefully if you are a reader of the comic, you'll enjoy revisiting it as the TV show begins to present itself.
If we decide to spoil, I think, unlike with the other shows, I think this one will be a little more on the ball with it, is putting in timestamps on the notes and stuff like that. So if we begin spoiler talk and then spoiler talk, then we can have it timestamp so everybody knows, okay, I need to stop listening here and I can start listening there, so that way we don't ruin anything.
There's one main question I can. In fact, it's funny. My brother the other day, I had lunch with him and he says, "What's this all of a sudden fascination you have with zombies?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, on your Facebook and your Twitter and all that, you're talking about this Walking Dead podcast and stuff." And I said, "Actually, it's not so much a fascination with zombies as it is this comic book called The Walking Dead, which just happens to have zombies in it." And my brother, he was. I told him a little bit about how the first issue of the comic played out, and he asked me a question, which I'm sure everybody that watches the first episode will be asking. And I hesitate to even continue this line of thought of what I'm saying now. Imagine the last podcast we did. Imagine us trying to do that podcast and having already known how the show ended. It would virtually be impossible or a completely different show. So this is going to be an interesting venture for me to talk about the show. The way I'm going to approach it is each time we do an episode review, I'm going to completely disassociate my brain from the comic. It'll be a struggle. I'll have to say, you think you might know where this is going because of what you read, but you probably don't, because as we've heard, it was either Kirkman or Darabont, one of them said, yeah, we'll follow some main beats, but we're going to vary. So this is going to be an interesting ride for me personally.
Yeah, I've been reading the True Blood books after the fact. I had never read them before. I watched the television show. I liked the show so much I decided to go and read the books now. And it's become pretty apparent in the beginning of reading the books that they did take main characters, a main general storyline, and go from there. But there's a point where the TV show definitely splits off from the books and things start to be different. So I think we're going to find that as the show begins, that we really don't know what's coming next. They're probably going to change some names around and subtract characters. They're going to change the order of things to make it more suitable for a television series rather than a book.
And I really hope it's that way. There's a couple of obvious story beats that I can think of, having read the book, that we'll have to see. But I hope weekly I am pleasantly surprised and shocked at where the story goes.
Yeah, I agree. For the most part, if we're going to see a direct translation of the book onto film, then we might as well just read the book. Some things obviously would be cool to see on the big screen, but for the most part, what's the fun in just rehashing what verbatim. So the interesting thing for me is going to be to see what the changes are and why they're changed. And we kind of talked about this a little bit when we talked about our True Blood discussions on Legion of Doom. I think the audience, to some degree, especially with a short 6-episode season, is going to dictate what is going to stick and what's not. These characters and these actors, I think, are going to define the characters, and some stuff is going to stick and some stuff is not. So one of the things that's no surprise with the comic, and the reason why people, it's funny for those of you that don't follow the comics, there are a couple taboos in the comic book podcasting world of things you just don't talk about, and Walking Dead is one of those things. If you're doing a comic podcast, you either have a serious spoiler alert or you just flat out don't talk about it, because so many people read it in trade or in hardcover, which could be delayed anywhere from 6 months to a year from when the issues hit the stands, that everybody's afraid to spoil anything. But I'm curious to see what the audience reaction is going to be to some of these characters and the actors playing them, as to how the creators of the show are going to change up what happens. If it gravitates and really catches on with the audience, I can totally see them changing that, because one of the things in the comic is no one is sacred. And in a TV show, when you commit to actors and personalities and stuff like that, some of that may not be as sacred. So it'll be curious to see how that plans out, and that's the thing I'm most excited for as far as changes go.
Do we have confirmation as to how much of the book these first 6 episodes are supposed to cover?
No.
Everyone kind of assumes trade number 1, but that's just a best guess at this point.
6 issues, 6 episodes. Some of those issues are pretty meaty, and some of them are pretty bare bones. Not in a bad way, but in a time progression way. Like there'd be maybe not the first 6 issues. I'm thinking generally throughout the history of the comics publication. There have been some issues that to me would be difficult to make an entire hour's worth of episode out of.
Yeah, I know there's a couple trades that I picked up and read through cover in about 30 minutes, for 6 issues, which is not a bad thing because there were 30 awesome minutes. But yeah, the story does have a wane and flow of how much the actual dialogue is going to be in a particular section. But that means that they can, one episode might not be 1 issue. It could be 3 issues if those are really dialogue-light issues, or it could be a quarter of an issue if that's a particularly dialogue-heavy issue. They have all that freedom, which is pretty cool.
I'm thinking right now about how Trade 1 ends, the 6th issue ends, and that would be a pretty nice way to end the season, I think.
I guess before we get into talking about that first trade, the day that we recorded our episode last time, episode 1, it was announced that there would be a season 2 of The Walking Dead signed. And then since then, the following day, it came out that it was only a rumor. And Frank Darabont had done some interviews on the website saying, no, it's been talked about, but certainly there's nothing set to go. Or is that the point that we're at? Does anybody know if there's been any more news of it being solidified, or if that was completely a rumor?
I actually thought the day or two after we had recorded that it had been confirmed. In fact, it was either the day or the second day after we recorded. I was watching G4, I think. They reported that, in fact, a second season had been greenlit. So perhaps they were working off old information.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the most recent thing I can find is September 2nd, saying that Darabont says that as tired as he is right now, he couldn't imagine starting shooting in February for season 2. So he pretty much dispelled it as a rumor at this time. And that's September 2nd. I can't find anything newer than that.
Jordan, usually you're all over this. How come you don't know?
I do know. Johnny's exactly correct as far as I can tell. I was researching as well. But yeah, I do remember, they announced, or it leaked, or the rumor started a couple days before we started recording that, hey, season 2. And then I think it was actually by the time we recorded season 2, or episode 2, because I remember mentioning how actually they just dispelled that rumor in episode 1. And then it was a couple days later when Darabont for sure came out and said, there's no way we're starting as soon as that rumor said, I want to do season 2, but it's not been greenlit yet. And that was almost a month ago.
Is anybody Googling right now as we speak?
I was just
I already
Googling. Yeah. I did it 35 minutes ago.
The newest thing that's showing up is that awesome new poster. That's my wallpaper. But here we have September 6th. The headline is no season 2 of Walking Dead yet.
Yeah, everything I've seen is that whoever it was jumped the gun, and Darabont and everybody else, and AMC has officially come out and they contacted IGN and everyone else to say it is not official. I think it's just there's a lot of talk that if it is greenlit, it will be a 12 or 13 episode season 2.
Which would be AMC's standard mode of operation. That's how they do things, generally.
Yeah.
I think what would be awesome is if, I know we talked about, if we were going to spoil anything from the comic during the season, we could give a definite spoiler alert, perhaps save it to the end of the episode. But in the downtime in between, in the hiatus, I think it'd be cool to talk about the comic and compare it with each episode and just see how much it did change.
Yeah.
That could be a way to fill our time between seasons.
Oh, definitely. And talk about the new characters and storylines, because we were talking before we started recording, and Brad pointed out that in one of the little vignettes we're looking at, that there was a brand new character that he didn't remember from the story, and that's Michael Rooker's character, and we know really not too much about him yet. But anything surrounding that character is new. Anything he does, anything he says, any way he affects the story, and he's not the only new character, so there should be lots of things we can talk about. Hey, did you like the way they did the comic better? Did you like the way they did the TV show better? Was this exchange better than one or the other? That kind of stuff. It should be pretty fun to do.
So I put that Walker Brothers song on my iPod. The way, the sun ain't gonna shine anymore, the way that big 4.5 minute trailer ends with that song. I've got that on my iPod, and it's actually a pretty good song. I don't know why that came to me just now. But I think I was thinking about the fact that I had watched the trailer again, and I think the guy who plays Rick needs to work on his accent. Because Russ, I don't know about you, but I don't know anybody from Texas who sounds like that.
No.
Isn't he from Atlanta?
Yeah, but I don't know anybody from Atlanta who sounds like that either.
I don't know anybody from Nova Scotia who sounds like that, but
Well, I sure as hell don't know anybody from Long Island that sounds like that.
except for creepy Jimmy down in the corner.
Okay, so our plan now is to take a look at The Walking Dead Volume 1 trade paperback, which is the first 6 issues of the comic. We're assuming that the beginning of the television show will be somewhere in this realm of time. Certainly the very beginning would be nearly the same. So this is your opportunity to leave us if you are not interested at all in the comic, or you have not read the comic yet and don't want to be spoiled for the show, this would be a good time to leave us for now. And following that, we're going to talk about a few points from this trade paperback that we would really hope will be in the show. So we're going to kind of do our wish list for season 1 of the television program.
I want to beg those who have not read the book to immediately find something else to listen to from this point on.
Yes, please join us again next time.
Yes, please do. But I can only imagine. Think back, guys, about how our first experience with reading the book and how blown away we were by it. I don't want what we're about to say now to ruin the television viewing experience for somebody who's never read the book. That's why I'm stressing. Please stop listening. This is mainly an indulgence on our part because we love the book so much. We've already talked about, I wonder if this is going to happen. I wonder if that's going to happen. But if you're adventurous and you're curious about the book, why not? As we've been told, it's going to follow some main story beats, but it's going to vary. So I think it'll surprise us all. I'm just excited. I'm just happy.
To put it in general nerd terms, we're about to open the Ark of the Covenant in the middle of the desert, and you don't want to be around when we do if you haven't prepared yourself.
Don't look at the light.
It's so beautiful.
Close your eyes, Marion.
I would make a plea to anyone that's even mildly interested and not afraid to be slightly spoiled, I guess, for potentially a TV series, to go on to like Amazon.com or InStockTrades.com or go into your Barnes & Noble's Borders, whatever, with a coupon or whatever you might have, and pick up the first volume. The first volume of the comic book, which encompasses the first 6 issues, is only $9.99. And if you order it online at like Amazon or InStockTrades or one of those places, they usually you can get it 30 to 40% off, depending. So you're talking $6-7. Which is a really good deal because these issues are typically $3 a piece. So and just check it out and kind of see. It is black and white, but it's very well done and of what to expect. So obviously we can't recommend it highly enough.
One more thing I will say about the trade is not to get used to the artist on the first 6 issues, because from issue 7 on to the present day of publication, it's a second artist who has done brilliant work. The first 6 issues are wonderful by a man named Tony Moore, but he moved on to different things. So the story doesn't change. It's still gripping. It's still an amazing story. It's just a different artist from 7 on. So don't let that throw you.
And issue 77 was just released today. So you're talking about 71 issues of Charlie Adlard, and only the first 6, a very small portion of the overall story, done by Tony Moore. Very different styles. I agree with Brad, definitely. And Mr. Adler was just interviewed on the Walking Dead cast, which is a friend of ours, another Walking Dead podcast, which you can find in our network at forumforgeeks.com. So check out the Walking Dead cast as well and hear from the artist of the comic.
Check them out at forumforgeeks.com. That's forumforgeeks.com. Found at forumforgeeks.com.
Okay, Russ,
it's 1-800-forumforgeeks.com.
Russ, are you ready to bring us through the general events in Volume 1?
I will, and I will also, when we post the show up, we'll definitely note the timestamp so that, like I said, anybody can fast forward or skip or end it here, and then we'll have our little outro. So again, just to kind of give those that care a taste, I'm going to briefly, very, very briefly summarize kind of the first 6 issues, which is probably going to be close to what the first season is going to be, or what we can at least expect it to be. And interesting to note in the trade, I've read Walking Dead in trade, so I read it in 6-issue chunks. I don't read it monthly. And Robert Kirkman has a little bit of a foreword at the beginning of the book, and his basic concept is that zombie movies always feel like it's a slice of life, and it stops basically when whoever's in charge of the movie gets bored, and we have no idea what's going on. So his for The Walking Dead was basically the zombie movie that never ends, and that he wants this to be about Rick Grimes and his life, and that we would never really need to wonder what happened to Rick next because we're going to see it. So again, Kirkman has talked about how he'd love to just keep on writing this and writing this and writing this, and after 70 some odd issues, and I've read 72 of them, it doesn't look like it's ready to stop anytime soon. So again, the book quickly starts off, and if you've seen the trailer, this is all stuff that we've seen in the trailer, but it's basically 2 cops, one of them's Rick, one of them's Shane. They stop this guy on the highway, and he's pretty crazy, he has a shotgun, starts shooting at the cops. Rick tries to do an end run around the guy, and gets shot basically on his right side, and takes a pretty good dash. And we turn the page, and it's Rick waking up, and we can tell he looks, he's got, a little more than a 5 o'clock shadow, and he's been laying in bed. He gets up, he starts to walk around, he's calling for the nurse. There's nobody around, so he grabs up his clothes, starts walking around. The hospital's completely empty. He sees a section of the hospital that's been blocked off and boarded up, opens it up, and boom, he sees a bunch of crazy looking zombies that are all scattered around the cafeteria. It freaks out and runs away, and is almost tackled by one, and as they fall down the stairs, the neck of the thing is snapped and almost comes off, and he stops moving. So quickly Rick goes back to the door and shuts everything up, and decides to leave the hospital. And as he leaves, it's very similar to kind of like 28 Days Later, if you've seen 28 Days Later, with the guy alone in the world. So he leaves the hospital, the grass is overgrown, there's weeds, there's trash, there's cars, there's people, just kind of laying about emaciated, and he comes across a looks like what was a woman that is completely nothing, there's really nothing but like bone and flesh, and he starts to cry because he doesn't realize what's going on. And this woman, or this creature, is still alive, is still making noises and moving, and he kind of freaks out. So he starts to move as fast as he can to get away, and he comes across again, he goes into this neighborhood, finds his house, goes in, and everything is, his wife, we see a picture of a wife and kid, they're gone, everyone's gone, and he gets whacked on the head with a shovel by some folks that have moved in to the house next door, and they was at first or whatever, and they bring him in, and they feed him and tell him what's going on, and nobody knows what happened, and the media shut down after a few weeks. So at this point, I think I don't recall that we ever get an actual timeline how long Rick was unconscious in the hospital, but at this point it's probably at least a month, probably 2, maybe even closer to 3 if I recall.
The art is really what gives you a clue into that, I think. I don't recall if they specifically mentioned how long the period of time was, but when you look at how far everything's overgrown and how all the houses and cars are broken down, you have these great giant weeds and things growing out of every crack in the sidewalk, and it really gives you a good idea that this has been at least a couple of months, I would say.
I was thinking that we got confirmation of it later in the book, like when he and his wife or son were talking, somebody said something about how, it had been a month since they left, and then he found him again or something like that. Yeah,
that's maybe 3 months, because, again, he says all media shut down after a few weeks.
Okay, yeah.
So at least, it took him that long for the media to shut down, and then it kind of all went to Hades after that. So, and like John said, you can definitely tell by the state of everything and the way things are decomposed that, it's been a while. So Rick talks to the neighbor, and he basically says, he's a cop, and, he's going to Atlanta, he's going to go shopping. So they go to the police headquarters where he worked, and, they grabbed up a bunch of guns, and they kind of have this interesting conversation about, about the neighbor taking a police car or not and trying to still stay law-abiding. And we'll see this evolution in Rick, but especially at the beginning where he still thinks that he could be law-abiding and, that people still need to follow the rules and stuff, because I don't think he realizes how widespread things are and how bad it really is. And that'll change definitely as we go along. So, as they're getting ready to leave the station, there's a zombie that pops up and Rick goes to shoot him, and the neighbor, says, no, don't, you might need the bullet later. This guy's not any real threat. And that'll be a recurring theme as well, is two things. One, you're trying to minimize your noise. You don't want to make too much noise because you end up attracting more of them. And two, you don't want to waste all your ammo when you don't need it because you may need it and not have it. And then something really interesting happens. And if you're not familiar with Robert Kirkman's writing style, he employs this technique in other works as well. I've seen it in Invincible, where he'll set something up at the beginning of an issue or the beginning of a sequence, and then he'll come back to it. And so earlier, like I mentioned, which was the issue prior, he came across that emaciated body outside the hospital, and he literally takes the time to drive back, go up to that body to put it out of its misery, and even sheds a tear for it. So again, kind of that long, that callback to it, which I enjoy quite a bit. So the next part really is Rick making his way to Atlanta. He feels his wife had some family in Atlanta, and he's pretty sure that his wife got out, took the son, and headed that way. So for quite some time, it's Rick's journey to Atlanta, and his struggles with trying to find gas for his car, and then he can't get gas at the gas station. So he eventually comes up to a horse and gets on a horse and decides he's going to ride the horse the rest of the way to Atlanta. And again, if you've seen the trailer, no surprise here, we've definitely seen that in the trailer where Rick is on his horse and his police get up with his guns and everything else, trying to get to his wife or get to civilization or anybody. And so he finally gets into Atlanta, and he's surrounded by zombies, and they literally knock him off the horse and start tearing into the horse while it's still alive. And Rick, armed with his hatchet, which becomes kind of his weapon of choice for quite some time, runs around and starts trying to kill them all off, and then starts to get overrun and starts shooting them. And then he comes across somebody that's running around the city, and this is a character that we'll come to know as Glenn. And he's the, if you've seen the trailer in the promo pics, he's the Asian character that we've seen. And Glenn is kind of like, he's a younger guy kid, and he's become adept at scavenging, kind of going into the city, getting what he needs, and then getting out. And so basically, Rick and Glenn kind of follow each other around to get out of the city and get back to the camp that Glenn is set up at. And when they get there, that his wife and son are there, and they have this big happy reunion. And not only is Rick and his son there, but we find out that Rick's partner Shane, from the beginning of the book, on the police force, is also with them. So he was kind of the shepherd, helped shepherd his wife and his son out and kept them safe. And then we're slowly introduced to the other characters that we'll come to know in the show. Mainly Dale and Carol and Sophia, and then we've got Amy and Andrea, and of course, like I said, Shane and Glenn and Jim. And so we find that these folks have just kind of set up camp, and they're just kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And they start to retell. Rick starts to tell his wife Lori, what's going on, and Rick finally has a time where he can kind of decompress a little bit and somebody to talk to. So it looks like things are starting to kind of have a moment of peace here, where they're all getting along and kind of handing out guns and everything to make sure they keep safe. And the women are kind of doing the laundry, and there are a lot of quips too about why the men have their duties and the women have their duties. Which again, it's almost like society's kind of gone back to women are performing what traditionally are become women duties, and the men are out hunting and gathering.
So wait, it should be right.
Send your hate mail to Brad at halfhourwasted.com. That is Brad at halfhourwasted.com.
I love sweeping.
Brad does Windows.
I'll mute my microphone now.
Like always in this book, every time you think that things are honky-dory and everybody's kind of got a moment of happiness, boom, they pull the rug out from under you, and zombies attack the camp. And they're quickly dispatched by Dale. So everybody's kind of freaked out. There's a zombie laying there with his head half chopped off. There's another one that's kind of eating guts. And everybody's just really, really kind of freaked out about this. And Lori kind of runs back to Rick, and they kind of have a moment. And we get this really cool panel at the bottom where Shane is really just kind of has this really face as he's looking on at Rick and Lori, and you can tell he's not real pleased about that. And then we kind of cut back to night. It's starting to get towards winter. It's getting colder. And Rick and Shane kind of have this discussion about what's going to happen. And I think Shane thinks that the government's going to come and that they need to stay here and just stay put. And Rick is kind of a different opinion that they need to move out. But ultimately, Shane convinces him that that they should stay. And Rick says, okay, if we're going to stay, we need a lot more guns, we need a lot more ammo, we need a lot more weapons. And so they decide they're going to make a run into Atlanta and go to like a basically like an armory and raid an armory and steal all the weapons. And a funny moment, and this is I think one of those that we hope will make it into the book, they take one of the zombies that they've decapitated or that they've killed off and cover themselves in the guts of the zombie to hide their scent, because they figure if they smell like one and don't make any sudden movements, that they could blend in with the zombies when they go back into Atlanta, and then they won't have to worry about running across rooftops and hiding and all that other kind of stuff. And the art is really well done because you see like flies buzzing around them, and Glenn, when he first rubs the bits on the zombie bits on him, he starts puking, and so it's just a really kind of cool, funny moment. So then we cut back over to another scene, and there's like all these zombies gathered around a tank, which is I guess kind of similar to the scene that we saw in the trailer. But in the trailer, if I'm not mistaken, you guys help me out, it was Rick hiding in the tank, wasn't it? Where he jumps in the tank and then shuts the hatch, and they all kind of surround him.
We saw him under the tank, and then we saw him getting in the tank and closing the lid, and then there was that cool shot that Jordan likes of up and away bird's eye view.
And if I remember correctly, that scene is going to be in the first 2 episodes. So that means they've reworded it some. I mean, granted, it didn't happen exactly the same way here, but they've taken that tank idea, and that's just one instance of, hey, here's an interesting plot thread, let's move it over and explore it more.
Right. So again, Glenn and Rick are their plan is working. They decide to break into a gun store. They load up into a shopping cart as much stuff as they can, and then of course it starts raining. And as it's raining, it's kind of washing the funk off of them, and it's kind of like the jig is up, and the zombies are all over them.
They got fun.
Yeah.
They got fun.
So then, while it's raining, we cut back to Lori and Shane, and we find out that Shane and Lori have kind of shared a moment, so to speak. And basically, Lori says, what happened with us? It was a mistake. It never happened. You need to forget about it. So obviously, we know what's going on there. So we then kind of cut back and fast forward a little bit, and Rick is out teaching everyone how to shoot, and by everyone, he's teaching everyone. And we find that Andrea, who's never really picked up a gun before in her life, has become a crack shot. And this is going to be a huge deal as this book moves on, is that Andrea is kind of the sharpshooter of the group. So she's another character I'm looking forward to seeing how they do in the comic, or in the TV show rather. So then a big point of contention is Rick decides he's going to teach Carl how to shoot. And I don't know how you guys feel about how old Rick or Carl is, but I'm guessing he's probably 8, maybe 7 or 8 years old, maybe 9 at the most.
I've always assumed he was a little bit younger than the actor they cast as the character, but that doesn't really bother me too much.
No. But I think in the book he's portrayed as somewhere between like 7 and 9, so he's still pretty young. And Lori is not real happy about the fact that Rick is teaching him how to shoot and letting him have a gun. So again, things kind of start getting quiet again, and winter is upon them, and they're starting to hunt, and we see a little more tension rising between Shane and Rick, and Dale kind of sees it and knows what's going on, and is a little wary of Shane because he tends to like Rick. Andrea and Amy, her sister, are living in Dale. They live with Dale in his trailer. Dale's kind of an older man. Andrea and Amy are younger women, and a couple of the other women don't look too kindly on that. They think it's a little strange, even though everything's pretty much on the up and up. At least at this point, there's no shenanigans going on with them. They're just trying to make the best of it.
This is how John models his life.
Yeah. So again, things are going well. So Kirkman has to interject insanity, and Amy, a zombie, comes up and bites her and takes a big old chunk out of her neck. So right off, one of the sisters has been taken out in the book, and the zombies are starting to kind of surround them from all sides, and everybody starts pulling out their guns, shooting them to hold off the attack. Lori has her gun, and Carl actually picks the gun up and is able to shoot the zombie right in the head, saving his mother's life. So even though, I guess that's the gun Carl had. So again, it's kind of Rick proving Lori right that it was a good thing that Carl had the gun, because otherwise she'd probably have been dead. So again, more zombies coming, a lot of shooting going on, and we find that Jim, one of the guys there, has been bit in the arm. And just like in typical zombie fashion, if you've been bitten or share fluids or whatever you want to call it, then you will turn. And so at this point, he says it's just a scratch, merely a flesh wound, and but we know it's not good for him.
Hey, remind me, because I can't remember. In the Walking Dead universe, if you just die of natural causes, you don't come back, right?
No, I think we do. Because I think that's one of the things is, I think, don't they worry about having to put a bullet in somebody's head if they just die from heart attack or something?
Well, I seem to remember them talking about it, but I think it was them wondering the same thing. I asked that because I prefer a zombie universe where it's bites only. It leaves that one tiny bit of hope that you could win eventually. If it's as soon as you die, you come back as a zombie, that's an unwinnable situation completely. There's no chance that humans ever win out.
True. Very true. So they're kind of burying their dead, and Jim is kind of taking a turn for the worse. And again, the winter's kind of setting in. Rick and Shane go out hunting, and again they get into this huge fight. Because they say they're not safe, and Rick is really not sure where it's coming from. And a lot of this aggression, obviously, with Shane is because he's very jealous of the fact that Rick is back in Lori and Shane's life. And so again, Dale's kind of comforting Andrea, for the loss of her sister, and they leave Jim, away and leave him kind of stuck on a tree. And Shane and we kind of cut back to the next morning. Shane and Rick get into a big old fight. They start yelling at each other, and Lori kind of steps in and actually hits Shane, and he's completely devastated, and he doesn't even know what to say. And everybody else is around him is kind of stunned. Shane kind of runs off. Rick goes after him. Again, they have this huge blowout. Shane picks up his shotgun and aims it at Rick, and little do we know that Carl kind of followed along, freaks out, and shoots Shane in the neck and kills him. And Carl just kind of says that it's not the same as killing the dead ones. And book one ends with Rick kind of holding his son over Shane's dead body, saying it never should be. So I guess that took a little longer than I thought, but I guess right off the bat, we've lost 3 characters in a very short order, which kind of set the tone for this book that no one is sacred.
And I think that's important. This will kind of blend into our talk about what we'd like to see in the first season of the show, but I think it's important that they have that. I think that core group members that we meet should die early on. I mean, you need to have that feeling that nobody is safe. That's the essence, really, of the Walking Dead book, and hopefully that carries over into the show.
I agree. And it'll be interesting to see if Shane is going to get it in the first season, and if these 6 episodes follow the first season, because I don't know that they're spotlighting him as a main character, but he seems pretty prominent in the promo art and stuff like that. So I'm curious to see if maybe they don't drag that out and rework that a little bit.
And I want to say I've heard Kirkman talk about, since the TV show was announced, how he's always kind of regretted killing Shane off that early, and that there was a lot of interesting drama that could come from that relationship. So I don't know, I could see Carl shooting somebody else. I could see Carl wounding but not killing Shane. I could see Carl accidentally shooting his dad, because his dad, just switched to who's holding the gun and that kind of thing. There's a lot of interesting routes they could go with it. And I don't really, as important of a story point as it's been in the comic, it's one of those ones that to me they can tweak it quite a bit and still get the same emotional resonance or different emotional resonance that could play just as well.
Yeah. So I guess to go on with the question we were asked earlier, what 3 things do we want to see from the first trade in the show? Who wants to go first?
Well, I guess I went already.
Would you like to remind us of what your first pick was?
My first pick was somebody, whether it be Amy, Jim, or an Amy-Jim hybrid, somebody in the core group must die quickly.
I'm sorry, you're saying you want them to kill a hermaphrodite?
Sure.
My number 3 is kind of abstract, but I kind of just want to see the camp. Like, we've seen it briefly in the trailer, we see it in the comic. I want to see it on screen. I want to see how they have the vehicles laid out, how they have the defenses set up, whether they've taken a page or 2 from the zombie survival guide and worked certain things in from there of, just what would be the smart way to do it. I mean, I can always visualize from a lot of movies, how you barricade a house, how you protect yourself behind a fence, all that kind of stuff. But the actual mobile base camp in the middle of the field, that's something I want to see on the medium-sized screen at least.
As far as for me, I can't really think of anything specific that stands out that I want to see. I mean, there are important elements to a zombie story, obviously, and those types of things I'd want to see. But I mean, specifically from the book, I would like to see the first 6 issues happen the way or the first 6 episodes happen the way the first trade happens. It would be cool to see a literal translation. However, we know we're not going to see that. I tell you something I don't want to see are running, sprinting zombies. And we don't see that in the trailer. We see the typical Mosian zombies. The shuffling. Thank you. The shuffling. I don't want to see a Thriller dance number for sure. I can tell you that. That would kind of take me right out of the show. Of course,
the first zombie you see in the beginning of the Night of the Living Dead is pretty much my limit for what constitutes a slow zombie. Like, it's still, it's not too slow, but it's not too fast either. It's not quite a normal walk, but it could almost push itself to that level.
I want to see a zombie with one leg.
A pirate zombie?
No,
a zombie parrot?
No, because he'd have a peg leg. I just want to see one-legged zombie trying to get around.
Well, I think...
I'd like to see a one-legged zombie in an ass-kicking contest.
Doesn't the Bicycle Girl zombie from the beginning of the book, doesn't she only have one leg?
Well, if any.
Okay.
I think in the trailer we've seen it look like she was just
a torso?
A wreck up from the neck up.
Yeah, I'm sure we could see a one-legged zombie. That'd be pretty cool.
Her name is Eileen.
Ringo got it. No, to answer the specific question, for me personally, there's nothing that I have to see that came out of the first trade. I would like to see Carl kill someone because that, as a parent, that frightens me to see a small child with a gun. And I think that would be a very emotional, shocking thing to see on screen.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I think I'm most curious to see, because that could be a very risky decision, and I wonder how, if there'd be any outcry and people freak out. But I mean, I get it from a story purpose, and it makes sense in the book and everything to some degree. But I'd be curious. The one thing that I really want to see is them taking the zombie parts and smothering themselves with them, and people puking all over the place so they can go back into Atlanta and try and mingle in. That's just something I think would add enough of a humor element to it, and especially when the rain, if they do them getting washed off and the zombies kind of running after them, I think that would add that humor element to it to bring people.
I would also like to see, while it's not necessarily important to me that Shane be killed so early on, even in the first season, I want there to be that moment where Laurie tells Shane, listen, it's over. My husband's back now. We thought he was dead, and that was a mistake. I really always felt that Shane could have been a very sympathetic character had he been around longer. I mean, Shane is this guy, regular guy, cop. He's helping out. Laurie, loses her husband, and they connect. Now Laurie gets her husband back, and Shane doesn't get anything back. And now Rick has emerged as the leader, and everybody's questioning Shane's plan. And Rick kind of takes over the alpha male role of the group, and Shane's kind of left, with nothing. And I think if he's around longer, that could be an interesting character to play with.
The second thing I want to see is something actually noble will be on the show, and we look at it tonight, but that is the horse getting ripped apart by the zombies. Nothing against horses or animals in general, but just the image of that should be pretty crazy.
Yeah, I'm wondering, it goes back to, how far is AMC going to let this go?
They've said it's going to be pretty brutal for that scene.
Yeah, so that'll be great. One thing we talked about, Carl shooting somebody, a lot of the serious violence in the book is human on human, not zombie on human. I mean, there is obviously zombie on human and vice versa, but a lot of it is human on human, which really amps up the seriousness, I guess, of a scene. And I wonder how much AMC is going to, let go by.
I have zero experience with AMC shows, so I'm at a loss to know exactly what to expect.
They will go pretty far.
Yeah, there's, not to spoil another show, but there's a scene in Mad Men that flashes back to the war, and the Korean War. And it's pretty, they show a character that basically was kind of blown up, guts hanging out. And, it's pretty much a crispy critter. And one of the characters kind of goes up to the other character and does something, but you see it pretty up close and personal. So if that's any indication, then I think they can be pretty explicit.
A minor spoiler for Breaking Bad, it happens in the first 2 or 3 episodes, but they kill a guy in the first episode, they have to get rid of his body, and so they put him in a bathtub with hydrochloric acid, which is not how you're supposed to do it, and it eats through the floor beneath the bathtub on the 2nd floor, and so this bloody pulp just comes falling out of the ceiling and eats right through the floor and into the basement, and it's just blood and guts everywhere, and they spend the entire episode just cleaning it up. It's pretty disgusting. So that is probably the extent of blood I've seen on any show so far on AMC, and it was a lot.
What about naughty bits?
There was upper frontal nudity in the pilots of Breaking Bad, but that was because the first season played on, I think it was IFC and AMC, so they could show that on IFC but not on AMC. I think there's been a few shots of rear nudity, but they're only on the DVDs generally. But there isn't really too much nudity in Walking Dead, period, is there? I can't think of any.
There's some of the characters.
Yeah.
You can kind of work around that pretty easily, though.
Maybe not in the first trade, but later on in the story.
No. In Mad Men, there's a scene where one of the characters doesn't have a top on, female, and the way the lighting is and the way she's turned, it's there's no detail. You can't see any detail. If that's a good explanation.
Is nipple a bad word?
It's a funny word.
Can we just say that there's no nipple?
I would go further than that even. I mean, it just looks like a dark. It's almost like silhouette. I would say it that way.
I can't actually think of 2 things that I would like to see in the show, but they're not from the first trade. They're from later trade, so I can't. I mean, I want to see these things on screen, but obviously we'll get to them later on.
Yeah, for me, again, trying to think of 2 more things. It's all stuff that we've seen in the trailer. The Rick waking up in the hospital and him riding around on the horse. Those are 2 big things for me. But we've seen those in the trailer, so those are kind of obvious. So there's nothing else that really stands out to me that I just am like, oh, I got to see that from the first trade. Again, I'm like Brad. There's tons of stuff as we move into 4th, 5th, 6th trade that you're just like, holy cow, that you really want to see. So,
well, let's change it to some things we'd like to see rather than 3.
There you go.
I do have a 3rd one. At the end, or towards the end of the trade, where Jim gets bitten, they have the fight, let's say, where the zombies attack in the middle of the snow. I don't know that I've ever seen in a zombie movie a zombie on human fight in the snow, and the blood on the white snow could be an interesting contrast and a really cool looking scene.
Dead Snow is a movie
Oh,
I
that's
want
true.
to check out.
I haven't seen it, but I know what you're talking about.
And that one, you get a double whammy of awesomeness. You get zombies and Nazis.
That's correct. The 2 people groups it's okay to kill.
And if I remember correctly, there were nipples in that movie as well.
Oh.
Well, that's always a plus.
Female or male?
Both, actually, I think. I'm just saying.
Yeah, so this should keep you busy for a couple of weeks, and we'll get episode 3 out before the premiere on Halloween, and we'll run our Robert Kirkman interview, which was really good. So we should be all set. We're ready for the big show.
Again, thanks for listening to the Walking Dead TV podcast. Again, you can send us an email at comments@walkingdeadtv.com. Visit the website at walkingdeadtv.com. You can send our Twitter at WDTV Podcast or our Facebook group. And please check out forumforgeeks.com. That's forumforgeeks.com. Or send us a voicemail at 516-468-7912. And please, we always ask for this, iTunes reviews. Please log on to iTunes and look up the Walking Dead TV podcast and give us some iTunes reviews. It helps us get noticed and hopefully get us on the front page. So we appreciate that.
And we will read your 5-star reviews on the show.
Absolutely. So for Brad, Jordan, and John, this is Russ, and we will catch you next time on the Walking Dead TV podcast.
Consequence you've seen has been stranger than I have any kind. Situation baffles me, I consider you, I want